Yeah, the money that they spent. Take another look and take some time for hemp. Don't cut trees for paper, 'cause it hurts the environment. Stop deforestation, yeah, it's time for hemp. An acre of hemp makes 20 barrels of oil. No need for pesticides to poison all our soil. People got no food, they got no clothes, they got no rent. Well, it's time for hemp. Yeah.
Thank you for taking time for hemp. I want to give a big shout out to all of my friends up in Canada and say thank you to KDK Distributors and Head Shop Canada for giving us a grant to keep us loud, proud, and strong. I normally talk strictly about marijuana, hemp, relegalization. The name of the program is Time for Hemp. It's not time for conspiracies or time for 9/11 or time for anything else that the government seems to be up to. I'm a little fed up with the way they've robbed us of our future by taking this remarkable plant that can set us free economically. But today, as we did on Tuesday, we are paying tribute to those who have lost loved ones in the 9/11 disaster. And if you'll ask me, it turns out from what I'm seeing, they were murdered by who we don't know exactly. There are some who do have suspicions, and we are going to be talking about that today. My joint host, Paul Stanford, an amazing individual, has a great television show every Friday night, and you can go to hemp.org to find out more about that. And our joint guest, Massimo Mazzucco.
Mazzucco.
Okay, I'm so sorry. I had problems with that. But it's not just you. It's like there's about a couple hundred architects who have degrees, and there's a lot of specialists and engineers and scientists who have looked at this information. And it's not just a handful of conspiracy cracks. It's a lot of scientists and doctors and well-learned people who are focused on a true investigation and finding the real facts pertaining to what happened that day. You've not had a chance to meet Paul Stanford.
Hello. Hello, Massimo.
Hello, Paul. Good morning.
We jointly been on one other show previously, a couple months ago.
Oh, that's what I thought, yes.
Yeah, good to be back with you. Been looking at your new video, and you're putting together a 10th anniversary compilation of information to update that, aren't you?
Oh, yes. What I'm doing now is, because, you have to understand that in the first years of the debate, let's say 2002 through 2006, the what we call the Truth Movement put out a lot of information, documentaries, books about what we believed to be wrong about the official version. But then after that, the reaction started from the mainstream media, and the so-called debunking machine kicked into gear. And they started responding, and basically at this point, they all pretend or say that they have answers to all our claims. So now the time is to list not only our claims against the official version, but also the responses from the debunkers, namely Popular Mechanics, ahead of all, who's taken this upon themselves to debunk the conspiracy theorists, and to show that also their own answers do not stand to scrutiny. So it's become a much more complex game now than it was a few years ago. And that's what I'm trying to do in the new documentary, yes.
I see. And so basically I think a lot of it comes down to the buildings came down in a very controlled fashion. And then Building 7 and how it came down has always been a mystery. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, actually, for anybody who is open-minded, that's no mystery at all. It's an obvious, classic, and undisputable controlled demolition. The building comes down with a rapid onset. It totally falls onto its footprint. And most of all, this was a steel frame building, and high-rise and steel frame high-rises are known not to collapse because of fire. I mean, the reason why they're built in steel, it's because they can withstand fires for as long as it's needed. And this, in fact, was, the government entity that was charged to explain this collapse had to come up with this theory that this was actually the first time in history that we have a new type of progressive collapse the steel high-rise building. But then they say, but don't worry, all the rest of the other buildings in America are safe. So it's really a ridiculous explanation what they gave. It's not a peer-reviewed scientific explanation, and it has been contested by, as you said before, not 200, but by now 1,500 architects and engineers who were just scandalized by this report by the NIST, which is the National Institute of Standards and Technology, and they contest that, and they show that their explanation really doesn't stand to scrutiny. It's just, words, but there's no substance, no scientific substance. There is no scientific explanation for a collapse due to fire for that building, because the building comes down in a totally perpendicular pattern, which means that all the supporting columns, I think there were 60 or 70 or 80, they must all fail at the same time for that to happen. And if a fire would ever, cripple one part of the building, you would see the building crumbling on one side, maybe, but not falling straight down like that. This is the most obvious. This is why it's called the smoking gun of 9/11, because it's the most obvious and most evident part of the big light.
Unless I'm mistaken, I think the official version, I think a member of the government came out and faced the cameras and said that actually it was the fire from the offices that caused the towers to come down.
Also the Twin Towers, you mean, or Building 7?
I understand that the fire had already been out for an hour before the Building 7 went down. So they don't really have an understanding of what happened.
No, actually, let me correct you. The Twin Towers are said officially to have come down both because of the damage inflicted by the airplanes, which was quite visible, and because the burning fires softened the steel to the point that it generated a collapse of the top part onto the bottom part of the towers. But in this case, also, the NIST, the National Institute, who was charged to explain the entire collapse, they state openly on their paper, says, we only explained what initiated the collapse. We did not analyze why it proceeded all the way down through its own body. See, think, for example, I think we said it the other day, if you're walking in the street and something falls on your head, a vase of flowers, you may break a vertebra too, but after that, the vase falls to the side of you, does not keep crushing you all the way down, vertebra through vertebra, all the way to your shoes. It's as simple as that. And this is the problem with the Twin Towers. In the case of Building 7, instead, which was not even hit by a plane, but was only hit by debris from the falling North Tower, which was nearby, the fires were generated by, we're told, by deposits of kerosene that were inside Building 7, which is very strange in itself. But
why would they have kerosene in them?
It was Major Giuliani's bunker, and he had all this kerosene because he probably didn't want to, be caught being cold in winter. Probably, I don't know why, but this was officially there. We know that. But again, fire could not have caused that third collapse in itself, and this is the major problem. And the government person who said that came on television was Liam Shunder, I don't know how you pronounce it, who is the chief responsible for NIST for doing the technical report. Of course, he has taken heat from architects and engineers like there's no tomorrow, but he doesn't really care. He was told to do that. He did his job and got out of the picture. He's not the real responsible. The responsible is those who said you have to state that this came down by fire. So he did what he could.
So I understand that the owner of the building had recently taken out an insurance policy for terrorism.
Well, as we said the other day, the story of Larry Silverstein is very, very, very strange, to say the least. This guy, bought buildings that he knew that were filled with asbestos and that asbestos could not be removed. And at the same time, he knew that the towers could not be demolished because of the asbestos they contained. But he buys the lease of the buildings in July 2002, 6 weeks before. He takes out a huge insurance in case of a terrorist attack, and 6 weeks later, the towers collapsed because of a terrorist attack. And he tried to collect, and also Building 7, which was his own property, and this is the problem really, because he owned Building 7 before he acquired the Twin Towers. Also, Building 7 collapses. So he ends up getting $4.2 billion for the Twin Towers, and he received $800 million for the Building 7, which is twice as much as he had paid to build it. So in my opinion, this is a very cynical convergence of large-scale global interest, political global interest, and smaller-scale private interest, which happened to solve many, many, many problems at once. This is the cynicality of this event. To me, it's unique because it managed, as I said, to solve both local, low-scale problems. The Twin Towers were a huge problem. They did not know how to get rid of them anymore. They could not get rid of them anymore, and it was extremely expensive at this point to keep them and upgrade them. And it solved the large-scale problem of global control of the oil, of course, which is what brings us back to hemp, basically. So
this is what blows my mind, though, totally about the thing, is that we got people who are supposed to love us as our leaders and do the best for us, and it's just really hard to put in my brain that they would murder 3,000 of us without even thinking twice while they're having lunch at McDonald's. Cause an implosion that it points out that these architects, you can't have an implosion of a building without weeks of preparation.
Oh, yeah, of course.
So it was well planned in advance. If there's a lot of reasons they could have had excuses to have those people out of those buildings. Why didn't they clear the buildings? Why didn't they just come up with some kind of reason to clear the buildings? Like, you can't come in because we're fumigating today.
Well, because because you need the victims to creates the indignation, the popular indignation. Had there been no victims, we would have gone out.
They would have been able to launch the war.
Excuse me? Yeah, of course. I mean, this has been done before. It's been done for Pearl Harbor, when it's known now historically that the High Command knew, that the Washington knew that the attack was incoming, but they purposefully did not tell the admiral in Pearl Harbor. These men were out sunbathing on the ships when they were attacked. But you need that to then say 3,000 sailors were killed by the infamous attack of Pearl Harbor, Day of Infamy. We need to go and get Japan. You need those victims. They're considered in the mind of those people who don't think like you and I. They're considered collateral damage. I'm sure if you went into the brain of one of these people, they would tell you, "But we do love America. We needed to sacrifice 3,000 of them to give everyone else the well-being and the standard of life that we are used to, and for which we need the oil to support it."
Well, now, we Americans are all absorbed and waving our flags going, yeah, we were killed by terrorists, we were hit by terrorists, and we're sucking up this lie. What are the countries around the world thinking as they look upon the information that comes forward from the investigations? Do they think that we're stupid, blind, or do they think that this information is off base? Unfortunately,
in most countries, if we talk about the Western countries, they all have to gain from the seizing of the oil and the gas in Afghanistan and in Iraq. So they all have to gain for the gain of the energy resources. So they don't say anything, and they actually participated to the war. They know very well, of course. If you talk about the people in the different countries, in Europe especially, which I follow closely because I am from there, from Italy, and I know also about France very well, I know about Germany very well, about Spain very well. The people, the majority of them, does not believe that the official version anymore. See, it was very hard in the beginning to maintain that this had been an inside job. But after you've seen what they have done in the last 10 years, built on this September 11th story, then everything becomes, makes more sense. Now you understand that America needed that to do what it did after. None of this would have been possible without 9/11. Now, I don't know if I told you the other day, but I'm going to say it again in case. One of the most important and strange and unexplained things is that on the evening of September 10th, and this is reported by Time Magazine and by CNN and a few others, on the evening of September 10th, 2001, a full plan to attack Afghanistan was placed on President Bush's table to be signed by the president upon his return from Florida the day after. Now, how convenient could it be that on the next morning, the Twin Towers crumble into dust, and then we immediately accuse Bin Laden, who happens to be hiding in Afghanistan? That to me is such a big smoking gun in itself. I mean, how lucky can you be You have a plan to attack Afghanistan, and the next morning you have the perfect excuse to do that, which you would have not been able to do before. If you use logic and open mind, it's really hard not to see the connection. But anyway, I want to make one thing clear. I speak like this. I'm very heated about this. I don't mean to convince anybody, and I fully respect those who have a problem believing what I say or contest it very, very harshly. I understand that completely, and I don't mean to be doing any propaganda in this case. I'm just saying what I believe, and I talk for myself only. I want that to be clear, okay?
Now we're going to take a commercial break.
Yeah.
When we come back, I want to talk more about who might have actually done this, and then how can we get an investigation, a proper investigation into this on track, if it's even possible. So we need to pack a bowl and think about that when we go and take time for hemp.
Treating Yourself Journal is written by patients for patients and has grown into a worldwide source of remarkable information. This journal provides patients and their caregivers information on different methods of growing medical marijuana for themselves and introducing healthier methods of taking their medicine. TreatingYourself.com is the largest, most comprehensive medical marijuana website on the net and is focused on the responsible use of marijuana as it applies to medicine. Treating Yourself Journal can be found in many bookstores worldwide like Borders and Barnes & Noble. Look for it at your favorite store. If you can't find it, demand it. Then go to treatingyourself.com and buy 2 subscriptions, one for you and one as a gift for a friend. Treating Yourself Journal, the most valuable resource for the global medical marijuana movement.
Warning. Warning. American. Warning. American Freedom Radio is habit forming. American Freedom Radio is habit forming. Use the truth carefully.
Watch the clock to smoke your pot. You should know you're not alone. If your grass is like molasses hydro-grown, that gets you stoned. If you're counting the hours, watching the minutes, for that special time when everyone hits it, take it from me, you're really not that far away. Roll me something fat and long, or pack me a bowl, or fill me a bomb. It only comes twice a day, but I don't care. It's 420 somewhere. This smoke break is gonna make my afternoon when I get high. Even if it's my last bud, I'll smoke it up. It'll be alright. I've been sitting here waiting for what seems like a year. My Jamaican connection said he'd meet me here. If the phone's for me, tell him he better be on his way. Roll me something fat and long, pack me a bowl, fill me a bomb. It only comes twice a day, but I don't care. It's 420 somewhere. All my cash, replenish my stash, but it's only 1:45. At a moment like this, I can't help but wonder, what would Willie do? He'd say to fire that thing up. Roll me something fat and long, pack me a bowl, fill me a bong. It only comes twice a day, but I don't care. Roll me something fat and long. Pack me a bowl, fill me a bong. It only comes twice a day, but I don't care. I don't care. It's 4:20 somewhere.
Thank you for taking Time for Hemp. I'm your host, Casper Leach. You are listening to the live broadcast of Time for Hemp all around the world on AmericanFreedomRadio.com and on AM/FM stations all across America. Thank you to Head Shop Canada and KDK Distributors for being caring enough to give us a grant to keep us loud, proud, and strong here. And my joint host, Paul Stanford, we appreciate your amazing support and all that you do for the marijuana movement. And our joint guest, Massimo Mazzucco. I got it wrong again.
No, you got it right.
I did?
You just never know for sure, but you got it right this time.
Okay, before I pass the questions to Paul, we got 2 segments left this hour. So in this one, why not? We haven't touched the Pentagon yet. And who behind this? Who could pull this off? And how is it that they did it right in front of our eyes? I mean, I'm looking at some of the videos, and as time's gone by, I'm able to see the little pops underneath the, I'm able to see the demolition actually happen. I'm able to see things now that I didn't see before. So how did they do it? Who did it? And the Pentagon?
Well, you got a couple of hours. It's really not. I mean, I cannot really answer that question simply. First of all, we don't know for sure who did it. What we can say for sure, or almost sure, in my opinion, is who did not do it. Those buildings did not collapse because of they were hit by the planes and because of the ensuing fires only. That is quite clear. And as you said, when you start looking closely, you see also the reasons why this was a demolition. But again, these are very technical reasonings, and they're very difficult to tackle in a few minutes. Let me say, just for fairness and complete information, that there are a lot of different indicators that those were controlled demolitions, while those who support the official version have not really been able to explain to this day what the exact dynamic would have been for those buildings to collapse without the use of explosives. This is where the debate stands today. For the Pentagon, it's different. The Pentagon has become a divisive issue within the 9/11 movement. Initially, everybody claimed, that there could have been no Boeing there, that could not have been a Boeing, and it had to be a smaller kind of flying object, whether a missile prop or anything in between. I mean, we don't know what the military can have that we don't even know. But in 2006, 2007, somebody started saying, well, there's enough evidence to support the fact that it was actually a Boeing, so it's split in two. But what remains really the problem with the Pentagon is that the guy who was supposed to fly that jet was a complete amateur, and a very bad one too. I mean, different flight instructors. First of all, he only trained on small little twin-engine, single-engine tourist planes, those little Cessnas that go, 100, 120 miles an hour.
Right.
He never trained he never flew once a jet in his life. Okay. And he was kicked out from school. They did not rent a plane to him because they thought he was unable to fly, period. And yet this guy suddenly hijacks a 757. He sits in the cockpit of a plane he has never seen before. He takes it all the way from Virginia to back to Washington. He eludes the jets that, in his opinion, they should be chasing him. He doesn't know that we don't have the signal radar, so he knows that. He reaches the Pentagon. He comes inside of the Pentagon, and, he's been lucky enough. I mean, Allah has been so good to you that he's brought you all the way there. He sees the Pentagon in front, and instead of just finally putting the nose down and hitting the Pentagon from the top, he decides to do a 330-degree wide turn, extremely, extremely difficult because of the speed he has, and which makes him lose target again. And then he approaches the Pentagon much closer to the ground at a speed that is deemed almost impossible for a commercial plane, and hits right the side of the Pentagon, which is the only area where there were very few people there because it had been just renovated. So there you go. Now you see that logic. When it comes to their own people, the military, then you see the logic applied. Don't hit the Pentagon from the top, which would mean you would kill thousands of us in here, and which means you could also probably hit Donald Rumsfeld, who is in the east part of the building. Please take a wide turnaround and hit only that little section of the building, which is almost empty because we have just renovated it for other reasons. So again, the logic here is completely missing, and the facts don't support the idea that this guy could have even commandeered the plane in the first place. I mean, we have different interviews from professional pilots with 30 years of experience in both military jets and commercial jets who said literally, quote, I could not have flown the maneuver shown for approaching the Pentagon that has been shown by us to us by the 9/11 Commission. I could have not done that. It's too difficult. It's almost impossible.
Wow.
See,
and isn't it true that there was no proof of wing damage to the building? You know, where there would normally be wings on an airplane?
That is part of the claim that it was not a Boeing. But whether it was or it was not, the problem is that this guy could not have flown it anyway.
Right.
So, you know, this is why I say that you can take the problem one step back. Even before the plane hits the building, we know that it couldn't have been the way that we were told. I mean, this guy was kicked out of flight schools because he could not fly, period. Could not fly a small single-engine plane. Imagine, you learn to drive a little go-kart, and you're bad at that. You can't even turn right. And then suddenly you jump onto Mario Andretti's car and you win Indianapolis. This is what they tell us it happened. So this is the most unbelievable part, in my opinion.
Paul?
In terms of the conspiracy, who do you think is at the heart of this? Can you, point the finger?
I would say, no, I cannot point the finger. I could certainly say that there's a lot of elements indicating that Dick Cheney and Rumsfeld were both involved directly in it. And Dick Cheney and Donald Rumsfeld belonged to a group called the Neocons, of whom somebody might have heard before. The Neocons put out one document. They were an extreme right political group, who had been pushing for the last 10 years for a big improvement of the military defense because they needed, and they put it on paper, on a document, we need to get global control of the world before Russia comes back up on their feet. And on September 2000, 1 year before the attacks, they put out a document in which they say clearly, we need this, we need this, and we need that, and we need that, but none of this will be possible without a catalyzing and catastrophic event like a new Pearl Harbor. Well, lo and behold, there you go again. God is listening to you. There you get your new Pearl Harbor. Not by chance it was called the new Pearl Harbor, because the old Pearl Harbor is what's helped America needed to get into war. And here's again what it was needed. This is my opinion, of course. It's not proven. I cannot prove what I say.
How did that tie in with these Al-Qaeda hijackers? You think they kind of planned this around their plot? Or
no, I think the Al-Qaeda hijackers are exactly like Oswald. They were patsies. They were used to disseminate proof of their own, to leave. I mean, they left tracks that they're so obviously been disseminated to be found. I mean, when these guys go to Las Vegas and pay for hotels and drugs and prostitutes and leave tracks that anybody could find, it means that they were used intentionally to disseminate. I'm sorry, do you hear me well?
Yes, very well.
Because I have a cracking sound in my phone. Is probably my own speaker. The proof was so obviously and so easy to find by FBI that is obviously planted or disseminated in purpose, which is the same they did with Oswald. They had him go places so he could be seen, and so then people say, oh, yeah, I remember the guy. He came in and bought the rifle. This is not exactly the case, but, there's many examples like that. So I think that, their fate was, unfortunately, they were duped. They certainly were not commandeering those planes. This is for sure. I mean, none of them had ever flown a jet in their life, and these planes, according to radar tracks, not my own opinion, they did things that were almost impossible for even professional pilots to do.
Well, it might be easy for me to say this sitting here on the ground 10 years later, but I went through the military, and even before going to the military, I got enough kahunas that if I'm in an airplane and somebody's got a box cutter, not a gun, a box cutter to another passenger's throat, I'm still going to get up with 3 other guys and kick that motherfucker's butt.
Especially these guys were 5'4", 5'5".
So you're saying the hijackers were not large men?
Oh man, they were like 5'4", 5'5" was the average height. I mean, the captain of Flight 77, the one that allegedly hit the Pentagon, Charles Burlingham. He was a former Marine Corps. He was an instructor. He was a beast. They call him a beast. They say he would have not let control of that cockpit if he had a gun on his head. And yet we hear that he was herded back to the plane with all the other passengers and just did not react. I mean, I think there was the wife or the friend or the brother said, my brother would have never let that cockpit to anybody else enter the cockpit. He would have fought for his life before he would give it up. And yet we hear he was sitting tranquil in the back of the plane, and Barbara Olson calls. Ted Olson says, the captain is here. What do I tell him he needs to do? I mean, this is a joke. This is a bad script from somebody who's watched too many movies,
Do you think he would be the kind of person who would do a kamikaze type of mission?
No, absolutely not. I think these captains were actually, what I believe, and again, this is my opinion, cannot be proven. My opinion is that these airplanes were actually remote controlled, meaning that from some point on, the control was taken away from the captains, the communications was cut off, and what these guys must have lived on those planes for the last half an hour must have been pure horror. They were prisoners, but they were hijacked electronically, and there was nothing they could do to stop those planes from going where they went. That's my opinion.
Wow.
When it comes to...
a civilian pilot would never crash his own airplane in a building like the Twin Towers, because even if he has a gunpoint, if he knows that he's going to die anyway, he's going to crash it to the ground. He's not going to go into the Twin Towers.
Right.
So he would never do that.
Has anybody explored the idea of it becoming electronically controlled from another point?
I would say within the movement is probably the most probable option. We don't have the answer for that. The only other option is that the airplanes were swapped and made land into, plane Northwoods, Plan Northwoods. Operation Northwoods explains as a plan from the 1960s from the CIA, which actually explains in detail how you could swap planes with a drone in the midair, make the original plane land in a secret Air Force base, and then, of course, what happens to those passengers, we don't want to know, but they don't come home. Flight 77 was swapped, and Birmingham was forced to land.
We need to take a commercial break here. When we come back, we want to talk about how do we get the investigation open and who's behind making that happen here on Time for Hemp.
Medical clinics are the premier physicians clinic in the United States. THCF has offices all across the United States from Hawaii to Michigan. THCF Medical Clinics has helped approximately 150,000 patients obtain their medical marijuana permits to legally possess, grow, and use medical marijuana. If you have chronic pain, multiple sclerosis, or any other neurological degenerative disease, or if you have any gastrointestinal disorders such as GERD, irritable bowel syndrome, or if you have AIDS, cancer, spastic disorders, seizure disorders, or glaucoma, call us at 1-800-723-0188 or visit us online at hemp.org. Again, the number is 1-800-723-0188 and the site is hemp.org.
Yo, what's up? Check this out.
The voice of the revolution. American Freedom Radio. American Freedom Radio.
cake makes my poor stomach ache. And all those pills are too much for me to take. I don't like cocaine 'cause it makes me all uptight. But coffee and reefer makes me feel alright.
Yeah, baby, coffee and reefer does make me feel alright. We are celebrating, I don't even want to say celebrating. We are paying tribute to the anniversary of the 10 years now of the horrific event that occurred in our country. And we don't know still exactly what happened, but we want to find out more, and we want a bigger investigation to take place. Now, Massimo, how do we make that happen?
Well, as we talk today, September 8th, in Toronto, started what is called the Toronto Hearings. It's an international conference where all the experts on 9/11 belonging to the 9/11 Truth Movement are convening and presenting what has been decided to be the best evidence against the official version. This evidence will be presented to a panel of highly respected international personalities, which includes Italian President of the Supreme Court, Honorary President of the Supreme Court, Ferdinando Imposimato, and this panel will judge that evidence very much like the process of a grand jury. According to the results of this commission, these hearings, there will be available evidence for, which has been judged as valid by this international grand jury for any entity in the United States or abroad who wants to eventually pick up a new investigation. In other words, the Toronto hearings are helping to provide the world with a qualified selection of proof against the official version, which could be used by anybody who wants to open a new investigation.
Wow. Paul?
I think it's extremely important, and it's you asked that question without knowing the answer, and it's very interesting because that question is not at all out of place. I mean, this is exactly what the 9/11 Truth Movement is working on at this time.
Wow.
It takes some time to prepare for a controlled demolition of a building, especially one as large as this. What sort of evidence is there of that sort of preparation?
Well, one of the very common questions that is asked by anybody, myself included in the beginning, is how the hell could they, place all those explosives without anybody noticing? Well, it turns out that a couple of months before the September 11th, the entire elevator system of both Twin Towers was completely renovated from the top to the bottom floor. This meant that those who operated the renovation had direct access to the supporting column of the buildings, which is within which the elevators run, floor by floor. So they could have done that, in plain sight. And then again, on the weekend of 8th and 9th of September, which was 2 days before, the entire South Tower was without electricity completely, which had never happened ever before in the previous 30 years of existence of the Twin Towers, because an electrical renovation, and a renovation to the electrical system was being done again in plain sight. So we have testimonies from people who said, the entire camera system, security system was turned off. Nobody knew what was going on within the Twin Towers for 36 hours during the last weekend. So, you certainly can think that this could be a coincidence, but it certainly also provides an answer to the very obvious question, how the hell could they have done it? They did it in plain sight. I mean, if you see a worker who's, comes in and says, I have to break here because I'm doing a renovation on the electrical system, you're not going to ask him, well, what are you putting there? What is that thing that you're putting in? You accepted the fact that the renovation is going on. You move away, and these people just work under your eyes and do what they need to do.
It was my understanding, too, that the area that the workmen congregated in and kept their tools and all that in, no one was ever allowed into that area of the building.
I didn't know this, but it's interesting. See, I learn something new every day. I will search into that. That's interesting, absolutely.
It's completely mind-blowing. Now there's families, too. There's a lot of families who are getting behind this. Now, how is it that our government is turning a deaf ear to the demands of a sincere investigation and unbiased investigation, and one done in front of cameras and in front of the public?
Well, I think that's one question that answers by itself. Why would a government who has got nothing to do with his attacks not want to have a clean and transparent and complete investigation? Why did the Bush administration oppose in the beginning any commission at all? I mean, we got to a point where the minority leader at the time was asking loudly for an investigation, and he received a letter with anthrax. So why wouldn't they want that? Why did they block even and stonewall even the 9/11 Commission? I mean, the 9/11 Commission chairs wrote a book after their experience at the 9/11 Commission, saying that they were stonewalled and they were repeatedly lied to by the military on the timelines of their actions on 9/11. So there is your answer. That's why they don't want a thorough investigation, because things would come out that some people don't want to come out.
Now, I understand that there is a large group of architects that people can find out. When they go to the 911truth.org, there's a lot of information, and there's a lot to learn there about the architects and engineers who are trying to solve the mystery, as they call it, of the events of that day.
Yes, I think it's called A&E, 9/11 Truth, I think, but I'm not sure. Architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth, that's the longhand definition, yes.
Now, you're putting together your own presentation. You want to tell people about that while we still got a few minutes?
It will collect all the main points that we have unearthed in the last 10 years. It will also include all the answers by those who support the official version and our rebuttals to those answers, because, as I said, now the debate has become very complex. In fact, the film is going to be called 9/11 Summary, 10 Years of Public Debate on 9/11.
All right.
And it will try to summarize, all the back and forth that has been going on, because this is really complicated. It's become huge at this point. It's almost like the Kennedy assassination case, even larger probably.
Now, I didn't know anything about the Toronto events.
This tells you, again, something very important. We have sent press releases to all the media outlets, but for some reason, nobody's interested in publicizing this event.
Which you would think during the anniversary of the 10-year events, that would be one of the main lead stories, Paul.
At least worth of notice, let's put it this way. At least worth of notice. But they probably know what's going to come out of Toronto, so they're probably going to be probably going to try to keep it, quiet, to hush it down, to hush it up. I don't know the expression. But they certainly will not
give it. We got time for one last question from you.
And your next video is coming out next month, you say, in Toronto?
No, not in Toronto. No. I will put it out on the internet, and then I will have it also for sale, like my other DVDs on Amazon. But basically, I will put it out public immediately on the internet when it's ready.
And we'll have you back on the show when you do that.
Absolutely. I will
aware of it.
Have me launch it, so to speak. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, that would be cool. That would be very cool. Now,
there's one thing I just wanted to say very quickly, if we have a moment.
Are there some websites out there that you think people should go to find questions?
Well, if you want to know about my DVDs, you may go to my website. I can spell it for you. You need to get a pen ready. Unfortunately, when I came up with this name, I never knew I was going to spell it out for an American audience, so it's a little long. But if you're ready, I'll spell it. The full word is Luogo Comune, and it spells LuogoComune.net. 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 And there you can find information about my films, and my website is all in Italian, but there's a page, a welcome page in English, which will direct you to where you want to go. Yes, thank you.
And we also have archives. So,
and on that you can also find the True History of Marijuana, of course, which is the last one I just completed a few months ago.
Oh, yeah, we don't want to forget that. That is an excellent presentation. It was nice to have someone who knew what was going on about it on the show today. Thank you.
Well, there's a big connection. 9/11 was done for oil, and oil is the biggest enemy of hemp. So there you have the connection right away.
And with that in mind, we're going to be talking about that tomorrow with Gateway Galbraith and Paul Stanford on Payday Fridays. So when you come to the radio tomorrow, come prepared to enjoy some wonderful conversation and take time for him.
You got all that money, yeah, the money.